My name is Joe. 20 years ago, my wife and I moved to Lake County with our 4 young children and settled down. In that time, we've worked, worshiped, played, and raised our family. Today, I've met the people and discovered the businesses and organizations that make up a vibrant, dynamic community. Join us as we share with you what makes South Lake great. I'm Joe, and Joe knows South Lake. Welcome to Joe Knows South Lake, and happy Thursday. All right, what a day. I love this time of year. The weather is just making me so happy. I sleep with the windows open. I get plenty of air. Even if it gets a little chilly, I get to pull up a blanket and snuggle. With my beautiful beloved wife. There's just nothing wrong with this kind of weather. I wish we could get it year round. Of course, if we didn't have the hot, muggy, awful weather in the summer, what I think of as awful weather, then we wouldn't get this weather this time of year. So looks like it's going to 80s, 70s, 80s during the day, 50s, 60s at night, just where I like it. So how about you, Jay? You enjoying the weather?
Yes, sir, I am. I love it. It's perfect. Perfect temperature. Perfect temperature outside.
Jay's having a little bit of a rough day today.
I'm having a rough start.
Rough start.
Today is going to be great, but I had a rough start. So
see, that's a great attitude right there. I know I got a busy day. I'm looking forward to it. Stuff for the show, stuff for real estate. I'm just looking forward to the day. All right. What are we going to talk about today? Well, today is a Great American Smokeout, so we're going to talk about that. If you're a smoker or know a smoker, you should pay attention. We are going to talk about a Netflix show called The Crown. If you haven't seen this, come on back. We'll talk about it real quick. We're going to talk today, continuing our Cup of Joe series about home, about going home. A lot of us are traveling for the holiday, so we're going to talk about going home. And finally, there is a project going on here. The Cooper Memorial Library is an awesome library in the county. It's the newest library we have. I actually believe it's also the largest library in the county. And Doris Bloodsworth was the editor of a book taken on by the library board. It's called Clermont: From Gem of the Hills to Choice of Champions. I think we have this up on the screen for you. When we come back, Doris is going to join us. Actually, not when we come back. In the interview section, Doris is going to join us, tell us all about that book and a little bit about Clermont. Really worthwhile to hear. So we're going to hear from our sponsors, people I appreciate. Great deal. And when we get back, we'll get started. See you in a minute.
Hi, I'm Stephanie with your CBD store, Clermont. I just wanted to let you know that we're having our grand opening celebration. We're starting on Thursday, November 21st. We're going to go all the way through the weekend. So if you don't have a chance to get here on Thursday, we're going to be available Friday and Saturday. We'll have some giveaways. We have a raffle going on, and we're offering a 20% off your entire purchase. So come out and see us. We've got free samples. We've got a lot going on, so we'd love to see you. Come on in.
Are you tired of having drugs or alcohol ruin your life? Do you need to get off pain pills but still maintain pain relief? My office in Tavares has programs to help you. While not covered by insurance, program fees are affordable. My name is Alan Zupkin. I'm board certified and have helped thousands of patients achieve these goals. Please call me for further information.
Welcome back. Always good to hear from the sponsors. I appreciate these guys so much. They support what we do here at South Lake TV. We do so many community projects that we that we do not charge for. We're just getting the information out, community calendars, streaming city council meetings, streaming the football games, just a wide list. And we have a wide list of projects we're trying to get started, that we're in talks to get started again, just to provide a community service. So when it comes to our sponsors, Jay and I and all of us here at South Lake TV really appreciate these guys. I'm going to mention them really, really quick. We have Sing Insurance and Financial Services. We have Erica's Tea Room, the mortgage firm. These were our first. We really appreciate them. But they have been joined by 50 West Realty, Alan Zubkin, MD, Modern Orthodontics, the Texas Roadhouse, and Your CBD store. And I'd like to mention Your CBD store in Clermont. This is out by Publix over on 50, out just south of Magnolia Point, or west of Magnolia Point, is having their grand opening. Weekend starts today, 10 a.m. So they're already started. It runs from today to Saturday. You can get 20% off your entire purchase, which is a big, deep discount. Great for gifts coming up. And they have a lot of counseling and information there. So please, get on out there, check out the store. It's a perfect time to check out the store, because if you buy something, you'll get a deep, deep discount. So,
And also want to mention Bergeron.
Did I miss them?
We did miss them, but
I'm
I'll
sorry.
pull it up here real quick. So if you have not been to Bergeron, it's over there in the Clermont Landing, or the Epic Theater Shopping Center. It's to the left of Kiki's. It is an amazing place. Definitely go there for lunch. They have daily deals. They have lambs, fish, chicken. They do have the Impossible Burger. They also have a falafel burger, all kinds of different beef burgers. And I got to tell you, Joe, these are the best French fries I've ever had in my life. Have you had these French fries yet?
No, we have to go do a piece there. I want to see a South Lake bite.
We should go for lunch today. I think Joe and I. If you want to meet Joe and I, you got time
Well,
for
I got a listing appointment.
Joe's got a listing
No.
appointment. If you want to meet me today,
How about tomorrow?
I'm going to be at Bergeron.
How about tomorrow?
We can try to do tomorrow
We'll try
too.
to do it tomorrow.
So I could eat there every day.
I want to see what the Impossible Burger is. That just sounds like something I'm going to struggle with. Got to do the hunch for, really looking forward
it's
to
going to
that.
be good. So I did want to mention them as well as one of our new sponsors. We should have their new advertisement completed today, and we'll start running very soon.
Perfect. All right, the Great American Smokeout. This is a national day, but it is something that's supported by the American Cancer Society. This is kind of a cool day, all right? And the whole point of the Great American Smokeout is quit for a day. They're not even saying give it up for life. They're saying give it up for a day. And I thought one of the coolest things about this, particular day was the history of it. It started in the early 70s. The first one that we know of, at least that I could find, was a Massachusetts town decided to do this to help raise money for a high school. And the concept was, you quit smoking for a day, and any money you would have spent on cigarettes that day, you donate to the high school. I love this idea, man. Especially with Thanksgiving coming, there are so many organizations that could use your support. If you look, and I was actually blown away. I quit smoking like 13 years ago. And I was doing 2 packs a day. It was expensive then. I was in the store the other day. I realized there's been a rise of generic cigarettes because, regular I couldn't believe it. A carton was like $65. $65 blows me away. So if you smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day and the average cost is $7.50, that's $14. $14. We had 1,000 people in the Clermont, South Lake area that quit smoking and donated that money to New Beginnings or a local food. That's $14,000. So, there are other sacrifices you can make, but today is a Great American Smokeout. Consider this. And here the hope is you'll quit for a day and realize you're feeling a little better. You might get your taste buds back. Your blood pressure and your heart rate will drop after only a few hours. So there are great benefits to not smoking. Smoking is the number one preventable behavior that cause of preventable disease. Boy, I don't know how that worked out. But basically, if you quit smoking, you can get healthier instantly. I recently had a doctor tell me that in spite of all of my weight, my extreme weight is far healthier than the 2 packs of cigarettes I was smoking a day. Okay, quit. So let's move on. The Crown. This is a television show. It's on Netflix. My wife turned me on to this. And this show is actually about Queen Elizabeth. The first season starts with her as a new young queen, and it follows. Oh, that's it. It's great. It follows her reign and some of the things that happened. Obviously, some conflicts she's had with Winston Churchill, and the woman that's playing now. One of the cool things they did is they had a set of characters, first 2 seasons, covering the first, I'm going to say, 15 years of her reign. And it was actually a very good, engaging show. Historical drama, so they don't go really freaky. There's not a lot of political message in it. They're just making this really good show about stuff that really happened. So this actor, they are into season 3, and they did something really cool that shows do wisely every now and then. Now they're going to cover a different part of her reign, and they have a completely different set of actors playing the Duke of not Duke of Edinburgh, the Duke of Wellington, playing the Duke of Wellington, playing the Queen, playing her sister, Princess Margaret, playing Princess Margaret's. So they've got a whole separate set of actors to play a different stage of life instead of doing the makeup thing. The actors come with a different perspective. They're really, really good. I love this show because, again, they don't try to give you some political message. There's not some subtle twist of what's going on today. They're just reporting about the events, and they're dramatizing some of it, I'm sure, not necessarily the conversations, but it's just really cool to follow and very, very engaging. This is a winner in my book, and I don't say that about many television shows. Even the shows I dislike big parts of them. Read, someday we'll talk about the show I love to hate, The Walking Dead, that I can't not watch, but I hate it. All right, Home. Let's talk about home going. We've been talking this week about home and what makes home and how it's about the people and how you feel. But, so often this time of year, we are headed off. We are going back. And, that place we're going back to is, for many of us, home. It's where our sister or our mom never left. It's where the bulk of our family still are. And if you live here in Florida, that you probably have a greater statistical probability to being in that situation, being from somewhere else. I have several friends who are that rare bird, a native Floridian. Jay is one of those rare birds, not just a native Floridian, but now lives where he grew up. And so a lot of us aren't. I came here 20 years ago. Actually took me 7 months to fall in love with the place. I really wasn't a fan until winter hit. Back to the amazing weather. And then I started to see some of the other things once I'd been here. And so my wife and I stayed. I had this conversation with my sister a couple of years ago that I went home for a holiday, and she sat down and she said, "Joey, when you coming home? When will you and Patty ever move home?" And I had to tell her, Crystal, I love you, but I live at home. My home is Florida. My children are now from Florida. I've built a life in Florida. Florida's my home. So when you travel for this holiday, I want you to keep in mind that while you may be going quote unquote home, keep in mind where your real home is. Keep your expectations low. Happiness and satisfaction is found in rekindling those relationships, in letting go of the old resentments. That movie Frozen, Let It Go. I don't know how the tune goes. I just know there's a song in there that says, Let It Go.
That's enough of it, Joe.
Is that enough?
That's enough of it.
Is that all we get?
I think we got it.
Okay. All right. The great thing I would like you to see is that you can also take home with you. And my wife and I, we have a signal. I mentioned this yesterday, but we have a signal when we're in a stressful situation. But sometimes carry a journal. Do you have a book? Do you have something that you can get alone and get quiet? You know, when you're around those people, and this is true, I love my family. I love my brother and my sister and my mom and dad, but there were situations that were starting to overwhelm me. And the fact that I could get to a Panera Bread, you know, again, finding home. I'm comfortable with the Panera Bread here. I go to Panera Bread there. I see the surroundings, the atmosphere, the products, and I could get into my journal and do some writing. That made me feel at home. That rest and pressure release. Don't be afraid to take a little bit of your home with you, because let's face it, home is all about how you feel, what makes you secure, not a place you live. All right, when we get back, we're going to hear from our sponsors again. And when we get back, we're going to be joined by Doris Bloodsworth, the co-author of this book, Clermont, From Gem of the Hills to Choice of Champions. This is up on our thing, or just was. We get back. I'll see you in a minute.
Welcome to Erica's Tea Room. Located in the heart of downtown Clermont, this specialty tea shop offers a traditional high tea experience that can be enjoyed with family and friends. While here, you can choose from over 100 teas from all over the world, and a multitude of teapots are available for purchase. Join us for lunch or choose from one of our special evening events. Call to make a reservation. Erica's Tea Room, making memories with every cup.
Hello, I'm Mary Rhodes with the Mortgage Firm, your local mortgage lender. I've helped thousands of families achieve the dream of homeownership in Lake County, and I would love to help you. Our team has over 30 years of experience helping first-time homebuyers, veterans, move-up buyers, seasoned investors, and more. Please read our reviews and visit us at mortgagefirmpros.com.
The best things in life aren't items we can grab and hold. They are the moments that grab and hold us. Moments that captivate us, inspire us, and enrich us. Moments that bring joy, strength, and peace. At Sing Insurance and Financial Services, we help you to treasure these times by being there when life's most difficult moments arise. Through our services, you will find independence, flexibility, health, and security that will prosper and protect your life. Whether you are driving that new car, buying that new home, opening that new business, or building a new family, we provide you the peace of mind and freedom to enjoy life's best things. Your next moment is waiting. Are you ready?
Joe Knows South Lake would like to thank the following sponsors. Welcome back. Oh, it's so good to hear from our sponsors once again. And did you get sick of hearing that? I'm sorry, too bad. I love my sponsors. They are like my family. They're one of the things that make me feel at home. And we are joined today by Doris Bloodsworth. She is co-author of this book. Welcome, Doris.
Thank you for having me.
Hope maybe you can think of us as your home, and maybe we can give you some of those feelings. Let's see, Miss Doris, Mrs. Doris. This is Doris Bloodsworth, editor and co-author with other library board members of Clermont, From Gem of the Hills to the Choice of Champions. She's a board member at the Cooper Memorial Library. She's the president and founder of Crosswords Communications, a PR and marketing firm, and she is a former investigative reporter for the Orlando Sentinel, Wall Street Journal, and Bloomberg, as well as other publications. Welcome, Doris.
Thank you.
I'm so glad to have people like you here because I'm a big fan of history. I love history.
Right.
And I really think that without history, we're lost as a nation. And frankly, the things that our leaders do that upset me the most is when they ignore our history or they try to erase it or change it. But we have people like you preserving it. And I really, really appreciate that. That's kind of what this book is about, right? What is the book about?
Well, the book is the most detailed account of Clermont's history. And it starts with the Ice Age, which accounts for why we have the ridges and more than 500 species of plants and animals that are unique to Clermont. We cover the Timucua Indians, who were the first permanent settlers here, and on through the founding in 1884 up through the present. So it's really detailed. And what you said really hit a chord with me, because the main reason we did this was to preserve the history of the area, because if you don't record it, then it's just lost for the next generation.
Yeah, so often people complain. One of the things that I tend to pay attention to, because I'm a fan of history, is, we have the names of streets, and many times we miss some of those streets are very, very old. We see this big 4-lane road, and the turns and the signal lights and all of that, and we tend to forget that many times those roads represent founders or happenings in our history.
Right. That's, like you said, it's true in most cities. One of the interesting things about Clermont is, if you look at downtown Vineland, New Jersey, which is where the founders came from, you'll see Montrose Street, West and East Avenue. They carried those names forward here. But there are also ones that are unique. One of the more interesting things about Clermont, most people are familiar with Bloxham Avenue. There's a Walgreens there. It's a major intersection when you're coming on Highway 50, and it's actually misspelled. It was named after a governor in Florida, but they misspelled it. So
how's it supposed to be spelled?
It's supposed to be spelled Bloxham, and they left out the H.
I live by there. I live near Bloxham, right. And so I never knew that. That's quite interesting. And that's one of the cool things about local history. I grew up in New England. Okay, in Boston and Concord, New Hampshire, and little towns in and around there. There was some in between there. And when you grew up in New England, one of the things that amazed me about when my kids went to school here and going to school in New England, like early on, second grade, you're learning the state bird, the state tree, the state motto, the state recipe.
Right.
And by the time you're in 6th or 7th grade, you have a real understanding of the people who made New Hampshire and the events. Did you know that most of the people who manned the hills at the Battle of Bunker Hill were from New Hampshire?
I didn't, but I just visited. My daughter used to live in Boston, so love Boston because of the history there, the Patriots Trail, and so forth.
Yeah.
But it was the first time I got to visit Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. So it was not only beautiful, but just being a history buff, it's so wonderful.
It is, and it's everywhere. It's everywhere, and that's one of the reasons that this is such an important project here, because for some reason as a state, and I wonder if it's because we have so many transplants, is that the history of the state itself tends to doesn't get ignored, but it does get glossed over.
Well, I did an earlier pictorial history, and one of the things that I thought was interesting, my daughter lives in Connecticut, and as you mentioned, when you're in New England, for them historical means 1600s. Here in Florida, it means post-World War II. So, when I had in this most recent book, we came across a film from the 1920s Clermont. I think it's the oldest surviving film that I'm aware of. And so for us, that's like, wow. But of course, in New England, it would be like, well, that's yesterday.
It's funny. When I became a realtor, I would start showing houses, and I would show a house that was like from 1975 or 1968. And people would say to me, that's a really old house. And I grew up in a house that was like 175 years, and it wasn't like a big fancy rich guy house. It was like, it was a 10-person, it had been one time a Victorian mansion turned into an apartment building. So there were places in the basement where they had etched in granite, their names, and you could see over the course of time. So that concept of history, I was like, of course I realized we live in a swamp. Right, and so wood doesn't last 200 years.
I talked to a museum director quite a few years ago, and she was saying Florida is a lot like the Wild West. And so when the pioneers came here, they were busy just surviving.
Yeah.
And we had several big the freeze of 1894-95 literally wiped out all the vegetation. And there were a couple of ghost towns that happened here in Lake County. So people were just busy spending their hours. They weren't really saving things and starting museums. So that's been a fairly recent thing. But one of the reasons we decided to go on and write this book, Update the History, is when people move here to Florida, like you said, most people, myself included, came from somewhere else. And it helps them feel connected. And so people kept asking for a book of the history once they landed here. It helps them feel connected to the rest of the community.
Do you know, it's funny, I went to a museum I think it was in Tavares. They had a museum, and I went to see it. And again, as being from Boston, I walked in and it was like one room. You know, I thought this was a museum. You know, well, that's what we're calling a museum. And the stuff in there was cool.
Yeah.
It was very, very interesting. But I thought, man, this is kind of sad, you know, that there's not. It's good to hear that people like the library board. I mean, it's not just one or two people. There's this tends to be, we have a whole historic village here.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that really kind of endears me to the community, is that we seem to have a respect for what's gone on. You know, maybe not an approval of everything that went on, but we have a respect for it.
Right. I think one of the things that I like about Lake County as a whole is that if you visit the 14 cities, they all kept their historical downtowns. And it's kind of amusing to me talking about the perspectives of history. I understand from the publisher who did the earlier book that The Villages is now doing a historical book about the villages, which is one of the newer cities. But yes, I think, again, I think people learn lessons from history. I think it makes them feel connected. And I always am inspired because I'm impressed by how resilient people are, despite whether it's natural disaster, wars, or what have you. Clermont was barely started before there was a great freeze. The city went from the boom of the 1920s, where property would double and triple in 24 hours, to within 10 years it went bankrupt. The city went bankrupt and had the most indebtedness of any city in the United States. And yet look at it today, largest city in Lake County and thriving.
Well, and you know, and again, those influences from other places. You know, I drove Uber for a little while, a little bit back, and again, getting the experience, my kids, and trying to understand other people. And I would pick people up, and you know, from other places, they want to know about Orlando, and they think it was this little tiny city, which it is in comparison to someplace like New York. But in reality, it was a railhead for cattle and citrus until Disney came. Disney really is what exploded us, and you know that. So understanding those influences in your own community are very, very important. Let me ask you, how is this book different than other books?
Well, there have been a couple of other. I wrote a pictorial history. There was an earlier book that on the city's 100th anniversary in 1984. Two women had really done an in-depth research, but it mostly covered the founding to 1974. And so in this book, we not only go backwards, like I said, to the Ice Age, the Timucua Indians, but there's quite a lot of significant history since 1974. I mean, people that live around here know the triple freezes in the 1980s that literally, it wiped out citrus and literally changed the whole culture of this area forever. And then, of course, things like the birth of the triathlons, the Olympic training that came here, the merger of Clermont and Groveland high schools. That was a huge, big thing. We were talking earlier about South Lake. That was really when the concept of South Lake really started to form, where the cities down here in the south part of the county started coming together with that. So not to mention just the national news, how it played out locally. Y2K, remember Y2K? We were all afraid the end of the world. 9/11, our police chief in Clermont was a 9/11 first responder. So I found it, oddly enough, easier to research later history than recent, just because newspapers have shrunk and so forth. So it just kind of added impetus that it was important to capture this history, not only now, but for the future.
Right. You know, the whole idea of coming together, one of the things that I think is unique about South Lake is that the master plans and the goals of each of these communities are, I wouldn't say dependent on the others, but are done in concert with the others. Groveland's plan complements Clermont's plan, which complements Groveland and Mineola, which complements Montverde. You know, it's something you don't often see in municipalities, which is one of the reasons it's great here. You know, as far as the history goes too, is that, you know, if there were not people like you keeping track of it, then it doesn't get kept track of. You know, it's so easy to erase history.
Right, and when you think about it today, I don't know if you saw the series Civil War by Ken Burns. It was excellent.
Yeah, I did. Yep.
And so much of that, what really made that, I think, such a personal experience to people was the diaries, the letters, and of course nowadays people don't have those. Newspapers are going, and so it shows like this that will sort of capture the history of the day.
We have pictures up. Are these all from the book? You can see these over your shoulder there. He has those on the screen right now.
The one that's being shown right now was from 1913. And it's a little bit amusing, but they formed a motorcade, and they were going to tour 100 miles. They were going to go around touting the virtues of Clermont.
100 whole miles,
100 whole miles. And you can see the sign on the front says, "We are from Clermont, Florida." That was on the lead vehicle, which was a Cadillac. So it's just kind of fun to look back and see that community pride was there. Are they seen on the screen? This is the South Lake Black Achievers. One of the things you said what was different about this book is we really wanted to flesh out more. It's just how I believe history is what it is. It represents the period of time it was. So a lot of times women and the black community were left out of the history books. So this book has much more about the leaders in the black community, who they were, and their achievements. Jay will appreciate this. This was, when Clermont and Groveland high schools merged, I can't overstate what a big deal that was, because the newspapers reported it was the longest running high school feud rivalry in the state of Florida. I mean, this was generational that parents handed down to their children. So on the last football game in 1992, the mascot of Clermont, which was a Highlander, and from Groveland, which was a greenback gator, literally met after the game in the middle of the field and buried a hatchet. Okay, and this building still stands in Clermont at the corner of Montrose and 7th Street. This was a bank, and in the 1930s it was robbed by the infamous Ma Barker gang.
Oh, no kidding, yeah.
And that story somehow was left out of earlier books, so we've included it. And this, people that lived back here before the 80s sort of sigh with a nostalgic sigh, because it was so beautiful. It's hard to tell in this black and white picture, but Clermont was, Groveland, the whole South Lake area, was surrounded 360 degrees by these beautiful orange groves. The air smelled like perfume, and when the factories were going, it smelled like orange cake. It was just,
I was actually looking at this picture earlier, I was wishing it was wider.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to see closer into the city. And, if you look to the left of this picture, you can actually see, I think that's Bloxham Avenue on the left that comes down. Is that Bloxham? It is Bloxham.
All the way to 50. And this, of course, you see in the middle is Highway 27, a 2-lane highway at that time.
And that's all houses now, houses and shopping centers.
And there's, of course, the landmark, the iconic Citrus Tower, built in 1956.
Which is now sitting in the middle of a shopping center.
I don't know if you weren't here, what you can imagine what it was like. One day, that's what it looked like. And Christmas, these Grove owners wake up and it's gone for good. I mean, it was dramatic.
It's funny because I came here in the year 1999, brought my kids to Disney and drove straight down 27. And a lot of that was still there. These houses we see today, a lot of this is growth within the last 20 years. So it's not like it's 50 years old, and that's kind of one of the things I think that's important. It's easy to forget just 20 years ago.
Right.
I came through Mineola and remember the thing about Mineola was in that drive, I could not. My daughter was 6. I could not find a place my wife felt comfortable letting her use the restroom.
Yeah.
You know, the boys could use a tree, but we had to find a place for a girl. Hey, look, I want to go to a commercial break here, and we're going to come back and ask you some more questions because this is really good. We're going to go a little long today. Do you have the time?
I'd love to.
All right, great. Look, when we come back, we'll talk more with Doris.
Hi, I'm Stephanie with your CBD store, Clermont. I just wanted to let you know that we're having our grand opening celebration. We're starting on Thursday, November 21st. We're going to go all the way through the weekend. So if you don't have a chance to get here on Thursday, we're going to be available Friday and Saturday. We'll have some giveaways. We have a raffle going on, and we're offering a 20% off your entire purchase. So come out and see us. We've got free samples. We've got a lot going on, so we'd love to see you. Come on in.
Hello, my name is Michael Singh with Singh Insurance and Financial Services. Our goal is to build trust based on a clear understanding of how your insurance policy protects you, your family, and even your business. When was the last time you took a good hard look at your insurance coverage? Would you be open to the possibility of reviewing your policy with me? One review of your policy can save you valuable time and money. Call me today to set up a review of what may be available to you.
Joe Knows South Lake would like to thank the following sponsors. Welcome back. Once again, always good to hear from the sponsors. Miss Doris actually brought us a little treasure. We have a piece, a film clip from the 1920s that includes the historic Clermont train station. And Jay's going to play this for us. I think this is absolutely fascinating.
A lot of people have visited the village, and that train depot is still there, but just something about seeing the steam engine come in and you see them unloading the luggage.
They would have called these guys stevedores. I don't know why they called them stevedores, but the guys that loaded and unloaded trains and boats were called stevedores. I think that's the clip. That's, again, fascinating. Gives you an idea how people used to live. I mean, you know, we were talking about the difference between Boston and Clermont. You know, I've always been fascinated by, in Clermont, if you see buildings, and of course I'm in real estate, so architecture fascinates me, right? If you see buildings that have these big tall towers, the Victorian buildings with these big tall towers, I actually had to have a guy that was, and this was probably 10, 15 years ago, told me that I always wondered about that. Why? What were you trying to do? You know, in New England, we have widow's walks. Right? Typically, the place the widow went to look at the ocean to see if her husband was coming home, to watch for the ships coming in. But those were apparently had a purpose. There was a technological purpose, and the purpose was in the summer when it got really, really hot, they'd put hammocks up there so the small children could sleep because there was a breeze above the tree line. You know, they're usually 3-4 stories high. So children could sleep above the tree line. If you look later, the ceilings in the older buildings were always really high. Well, they didn't have air conditioning. That was about allowing the heat to rise so they could be cooler at the bottom. I've always been fascinated at that.
Same thing with, you'll see a lot of the older homes have porches, and sometimes they would sleep out on the porch for that same reason.
Yeah, because the porch, you didn't hang out inside when it was hot and the house was 97 degrees. You had to get out on the porch where you hoped there was a breeze.
You see some of these older pictures in Florida where people are wearing clothes of wool. The men are wearing suits, the women are wearing dresses down on the ground. You think, oh my goodness, how did they survive?
Well, one of the things, we know that one of the biggest contributors World War II gave to our society was refrigeration and air conditioning. Now, we had refrigeration and air conditioning before, but they were really developed during World War II because we wanted to feed the men, and there were places that were hot. They needed air conditioning. And so people...
I was just going to say World War II, one of the other innovations that really had an impact on Clermont is that's when they learned how to have concentrated orange juice so that they could get it to the soldiers.
Right, yeah.
And up until World War II, most of the groves were grapefruit, and it was not really a part of the American diet to have orange juice for breakfast. But that when the GIs came home, they had that habit, and so that's when orange juice took off, and there were these new processes, and that's when Clermont in this area really boomed with the citrus groves.
When it's fest. I think I saw a picture somewhere of a theater. Was there a movie theater in Clermont?
There was a movie theater in Clermont. I believe it was on 8th, and then Groveland had this huge auditorium-style movie theater there.
I believe it was a picture of the Clermont, but it was funny to me because the picture, the biggest print on the sign said air conditioning. It was from like the 30s. It said air conditioning. I mean, even the movie they were talking about was far less important than the air conditioning. And you went in and paid a nickel, and you could sit in air conditioning on a Saturday afternoon for a few hours.
For a short time, Clermont actually was touting itself as the Hollywood of the East, and they enticed a movie company that had offices in Chicago and Clermont, and they did make 3 films, and then the company went under. But for a short time, Clermont had its heyday in the film industry.
It sounds like the fathers of the city were always trying to get something to attract business here, a reason to be us.
Right.
And that's actually part of understanding the history, that they were concerned about the same things we were concerned about. They might not have been dealing with the cultural things that we deal with, but they, as people, they were worried about how are we going to keep our city alive? What's the next step?
Educating our children. It was the same thing.
Where do we go from here? Do we cling to the past in our groves, or do we move on? I think it was Catherine Dean that came on and told us.
Love Catherine.
I love Catherine. And you had her position for a little while on to see. I did my research. You were the director of communications for the city, and you worked with the chamber for a little while too, didn't you?
Yes.
See, you have a history too. But Catherine actually talked about how those first settlers wanted to make this a tomato community. The idea was they were going to grow tomatoes.
It was the tomato capital of Florida, and on December 2nd, when we have the book launch, we're actually going to show the 17-minute version of the film clip you just saw. And there's a gentleman holding up these tomatoes. And I'd heard about the tomatoes that grew here. I mean, they're beautiful. They're huge. They're all over this vine that he's holding up. But yeah, Clermont was once the tomato capital of Florida before a freeze wiped that out.
Do you know, which is why I'm sure they went to oranges, because they probably stood up a little better to a freeze, normally, right? I wish I could figure out how they did it. I'm a hobbyist tomato grower, and my plants always seem to die from the bottom up. I'll get tomatoes, but they only come to a certain place. Maybe you could give me some resources to check out the history of what they did. Because typically Florida's too hot for something like that. So at any rate, that's a whole nother subject. We have your book up here. I think this is the website.
Right. If people want to find out more about the book, or if they want to order it, they can pre-order it now and pick it up on the 2nd. But yeah, we're really proud of it, and it just shows you something about the book. It's ClermontBook.com. And the proceeds all go to support.
Is this the book?
It is. And the proceeds, let me hold it up here. The proceeds all go to support programs at the Cooper Memorial Library Association.
Great.
The original library, you can see it in the Clermont Historic Village. They moved it there. Where it was originally located is now the parking lot for City Hall.
And obviously this wonderful book, and this is a book for reading. It's not just a set it on your coffee table and forget about it. You really want the information that's in the book. If you're going to understand your history, you must learn about it. And is this the film? As she brought it, I told her props were good.
Yeah.
Is this the film?
This is the film. And
please tell me this isn't the original. I'll get really nervous.
it is the original.
It is the original.
And And as I said, to my knowledge, it's the oldest existing film, and we just kind of stumbled on it. We were wrapping up one of our meetings. We meet 4 times a year, and the library knew we were researching. They said, we have these old films. We don't know what's on them or if it's useful. It could be about anything, but we don't have projectors like this. So I took it, had it digitized just on a hunch, and there was this 17 minutes of 1920s Clermont. It's just wonderful. It shows the school, it shows the downtown businesses, the hotels. You saw the train.
Did you have other films? I mean, throughout the years?
No, there was like...
Was it just this was the only one?
There was this one. There were a couple of later films that were in the smaller... I don't know what came after 8 millimeter, which I think is what this was, but they were in later years, and they show it was kind of funny because the things people enjoy now. It showed the sunsets and the flowers, but this other one, you got to see the people and the way they dressed, the cars that were in downtown. So it was really fun.
I would say I'd be interested in just seeing a montage of all of that. You know, maybe as we were talking earlier, maybe South Lake TV can do something. We broadcast some of this. Well, let me ask you. I have 2 more questions. Jay, do I have time or do I got to wrap? Okay. I wanted to ask, did you discover anything surprising?
I did. There were some stories I hadn't heard about. One of them, for this day and time, was really uplifting, and it was in the late 1960s. There was a program President Eisenhower had started called People to People. And so a group of Danish citizens came to Clermont, and the community went all out. And women sewed Danish flags, hundreds lined the streets and met their bus. And for a whole week, they entertained them. The Sentinel brought them over, showed them a tour. Then the attraction Cypress Gardens took them down there for a whole day. Every day they had activities planned. The churches, the clubs, everyone got behind it. And when they left, the citizens, both Clermont and Danish citizens, cried, and some of them continued to come back to Clermont. And I just thought how wonderful that would be if we had more of that.
Yeah, it says something about the people that created the community. Again,
right.
You know, that they were real people with feelings and desires and dreams and fears. I love that part of history. You know, and if you can understand that part of history, it's easier to, it's not just dates and events, you know.
More relatable.
It's more relatable. It's what did people feel. It's why I talked about The Crown. You know, you can understand a little better.
This was a real person.
It was a real person. Right. And it goes into some of what motivated her. And you kind of understand why this lady might be cold, you know, or might appear cold, you know. The other question I'd like
By the way, we do have a royal connection here in Clermont.
We do.
Princess Diana's butler moved here, retired here, and wrote a bestseller book. And then he has since moved back to England. His wife stayed here, and she had served the royal family as well. So.
You know, I've honestly been somewhat surprised by the number of authors that reside in South Lake County, particularly in Clermont, though. I've really been exposed to quite a few of them. And I mean, not just your local, I made a book, I printed it, and I have 10,000 copies in my garage. I mean, guys who are like really established authors and teachers, and, you know, that they've published quite a bit out of Clermont.
Probably the best-selling children's author of our time, Kate DiCamillo, who did Because of Winn-Dixie, which became a movie.
Yeah.
She grew up here in Clermont, graduated from Clermont High School. We mentioned her in the book, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe it says something about how inspiring this area is.
There is actually there's actually a best-selling author, science fiction author. One of my favorites lives in Lakeland. Another one lives actually in the Villages. He's a recent transplant, though. He used to live in Maryland. But, you know, this area is a real big draw, not just for people coming out of Orlando and stuff, but for people all over the country because of the things you've discovered in this book. What was your biggest lesson? What was the biggest wow or aha that you took out of this? Whether it's personal, business, just the history?
I think as I meant, well, one thing was this film, when that came back from being, because we didn't know what was on it being so old, we didn't even know if it would be brittle and break. It was really exciting. I've seen still pictures of the train and so forth. When I saw that come to life, that was really exciting to me. But I think, as I earlier mentioned, every time I study history, I'm inspired by how resilient people are and how, despite the cynicism of today, people really do want to help their neighbors when there's a tragedy or something like that. How people people would not have survived. Our communities would not be here today had it not been for neighbors helping neighbors. And I think that's my biggest takeaway.
That is such a cool perspective. And on that very cool, positive note, I'm going to say thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
This has been a great show, a great interview. I really, I don't think we've gone this long with anybody, have we, Jay?
New record.
Woo!
New record. It's totally fascinating. I really
Thank you.
appreciate you. You know, maybe it's just me and you, but I trust that people will appreciate what we talked about. Look, if you know anybody that should be a guest on Joe Knows South Lake, please reach out to me. Jay has the information up. You can email me, Facebook me, direct message me through Messenger. You can text me or call me. I will respond to all of it. In my defense, sometimes I'm a day or two behind on the Messenger, but do it anyways. I will get back to you. And if you know anybody that wants to brand or promote their business, they should be talking to me. They should be talking to Jay. South Lake TV is one of the best ways you can get your message out to the local community. And finally, I'd like to remind you that there is greatness inside you. And like Miss Doris has showed us, she has used her greatness to bring out the greatness in others. And I encourage you to do the same. Dare to show your greatness today by bringing out the greatness in others. This has been Joe Carlisle with Joe Knows South Lake. I will see you tomorrow, and I really do love you. Bye-bye. My name is Joe. 20 years ago, my wife and I moved to Lake County with our 4 young children and settled down. In that time, we've worked, worshiped, played, and raised our family. Today, I've met the people and discovered the businesses and organizations that make up a vibrant, dynamic community. Join us as we share with you what makes South Lake great. I'm Joe, and Joe Knows South Lake. Joe Knows South Lake would like to thank the following sponsors: